scene.
Harris, where are you? Are you about to hit the thing? Are you hit the thing already?
She's ready. Yeah.
I'm making a thumbnail. I'm gonna stream this
Okay.
to
Go
me.
ahead. Go. Welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known, a special report, breaking news. President Joe Biden has withdrawn from the race. He is not seeking reelection, and has decided, apparently, well, not apparently, but he's decided to endorse his Vice President Kamala Harris. Huge news. Thanks for joining us, Austin Cooper, of course, and the one and only Lauren Berg. Lauren, I mean, absolutely earth shattering, but in the sense that this has never really happened before. But are you surprised?
Yeah, I am surprised. I am surprised. I thought he was dug in. I thought he was going to stay. I was expecting him to stay in the race. As early as this morning, we saw Quentin Fulks, his campaign manager, on national TV saying he was staying in the race. We saw General O'Malley Dillon yesterday, I believe, on the air. So, campaign co-chair on the air saying he was staying in the race. Shout out to my friend Phil Thompson, the attorney from Loudoun County. He was the chair of the Loudoun County NAACP. He predicted that this was going to happen. He is not in the
Yeah.
media, but he predicted the exact same day. So I got to give him a shout out. And I thought he was completely crazy. So, I am surprised it happened. The answer to your question.
Well, the statements are coming left and right, as you can expect. Just got this from Al Sharpton, who says that President Biden, it's a quote, Austin, President Biden has devoted most of his adult life to public service. He had more than paid his dues to our great nation, but he saw what was at stake. This man answered the highest call of his career and saved our fragile democracy from destruction in the process. Vice President Harris, Austin, Al Sharpton goes on to say, Vice President Harris and every black woman in a seat of power are already under attack. No truer statement than that, for sure.
Yeah. Hey, Lauren. Good to see you, my young
Good
sister.
seeing you. Good
I'm
seeing
not.
you.
I am. Unlike my sister, I am not surprised. I just felt for the last couple of days. I just didn't see how he was going to survive this with the Democratic elites coming out against him, with the elites withholding up to 90, if not more, $1 million. But I got to be honest with you, my brother and sister.
Oh, I think he's got to be
He'll be
honest with us, and then he leaves.
back. He'll be back. He'll be back. I just
He'll
hit
be
something.
back. But Lauren, again, I mentioned statements, Al Sharpton's statement, but also the first statement I got immediately was from the Washington delegation, Democratic Party, Shasti Conrad, who immediately called for Vice President Harris to lead the ticket. There's no other choice, is there?
There really isn't. Uh, there's just not. I mean, I think from a legal standpoint and from a timing standpoint, as Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio Cortez brought up the other night, timing is a huge issue. And as we sit here right now, we have 24 days to the convention. No, I'm sorry. This is day 25 into this crisis. We have 29 days or 28 days to the convention, 60 days to early voting in Virginia, and other states have early voting, and 106 days to election day. Timing is a huge problem here, a huge problem. And of course, as most people know, in any sort of crisis, the amount of time you have to deal with it is a key element to how you respond. And this has been dragging on for 24 days, almost 3 weeks of this crisis. And finally, we get to the point where I think the Democrats can figure out who their nominee is, which is no small thing, obviously.
Lauren, I mean, it's only you articulated this so well last week on the program, but so if Kamala Harris is the if the vice president is the nominee now, if she's going to be the nominee, is it too late? I mean, this could have been done earlier, but is it too late?
No, it's not too late. When
Okay.
your name is on the ballot for an election, Your name is on the ballot for an election, and people are going to show up and vote. It is a challenge, though. Joe Biden does have certain voting blocks that are going to be hard for her to win over, and this is an unprecedented thing. A black woman being the nominee. Of course, she's not officially the nominee yet. That officially happens at the convention, but there's got to be a discussion about who she can run with. It might bring some of those voting blocks, namely white men and white voters. And that was one of the reasons, that was one of the big arguments for Joe Biden 4 years ago. He brings that, what is commonly referred to as the working class white voter. Of course, the
Right.
working class black voter is a huge block as well, as are black women and black men, the two most dedicated blocks for the Democratic Party. I suspect that they're going to be showing up big time. And I also think it ends the problem for the Democrats in Michigan. Michigan, with regard to the Arab American
Great
community,
point.
and the Arab American community said, we're not happy about this Gaza policy. They vote 100,000 strong, uncommitted in the primary, which I think should have been very
Mhm.
scary for the Democratic Party. The vice president has a slightly different idea on that policy. And by the way, Benjamin Netanyahu will be doing a joint session. Benjamin Netanyahu will be speaking to a joint
Yes.
session of Congress on Wednesday.
On Wednesday, yeah. Some are saying that this is setting up Vice President Harris to fail. What's your thoughts on that, Lauren?
Yeah, that is the Teslin Figaro theory, and I think that Teslin Figaro is extremely, extremely intelligent and knowledgeable about what she's talking about, and that should be very much paid attention to. Because if you think about it for a second, if the vice president fails against Donald Trump 106 days from now, it damages her chances to run for president in 2028. And then everybody's talking about the new crop of people coming up, Wes Moore and Pete Buttigieg and all that. She should be one of those people. I actually think she should be one of those people either way, because what just happened is not her fault. She has got to almost like she's got to save the party in this moment, really.
Yeah.
And I think
What's
Go
new?
ahead.
Everything on the shoulders of a black woman.
Right.
What's
And
new?
I think exactly. I think she was ill-served by this White House in a lot of ways. And I think the first thing she's got to do, if she is the nominee, is to clean house in terms of staff, because there are people involved in this that clearly were not on her team. And there's a staffing issue. There's also a messaging issue. There's a staffing issue. They need younger people in there, and they need some diversification with regard to message, and younger folks that know what they're doing with memes and stuff like that. And I don't see it on the Biden team. And Harris has got to fix that problem.
In case you folks are just joining us, in case you are just, fishing or whatever on this Sunday, President Biden has announced he is dropping his campaign for re-election. He has endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris. Erica Williams writes in on YouTube. She says, I am so disappointed. Power 96 says this is one big mess. Greer just had up Bakari Sellers' quote. Lauren, he says that Democrats should be embarrassed by the way President Biden was treated by his own colleagues the last month. He is one of the most transformative presidents of a generation. I dare not wage into another. Kamala Harris is battle tested and battle ready. Let's take the first part of his tweet there. They should be embarrassed. I don't see how otherwise you can paint that picture.
Yeah, well, clearly this was a mistake. You nominated, you Democratic Party. Yeah,
You're good, Lauren.
talking without talking. I got to get my mic on here anyway.
We lost Austin, and now our chief, the person with all the knowledge of this stuff is having some difficulties. We can't have that, Lauren. Come on now. Pete Buttigieg, you see his quote there. Joe Biden has earned his place among the best and most consequential presidents in American history. I don't think that's an overstatement at all. As Lauren fixes her situation there, I will tell you this. Politics has never been my bag and never really will be my bag, but I will say this. I lived through, obviously, a little bit. I can recall a little bit of Nixon, certainly Ford, Carter, Reagan, etc., Clinton. And I saw something in this man, that we probably didn't see in this man 30 years ago. We probably didn't see it in him 20 years ago, but I saw in him somebody who actually cared about the job and the people he represented. He really appeared to care. And contrary to what might be coming in November, that is a huge deal, Lauren.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we have to realize is that Joe Biden is a person, unlike much like Donald Trump as well. You know who that person is. You know what you're getting. You know that personality. It is right out in front of you. And there's nothing about Joe Biden that's mysterious. He's been with us since the 1970s. We've seen his mistakes, we've seen his gaffes, we've seen his legislative errors with regard to the Clinton crime bill. And I mean, but the guy, at the end of the day, you know who this guy is. That's a big deal, because a lot of these people that come along in politics, not only do you not know who they are, sometimes you do know who they are and you don't like it very much. But Biden is one of these guys that is that throwback. He's a really sort of, to me, a throwback era politician, that 70s, 60s style politician. And that goes a long way with voters. And so Harris is going to have to do a lot to get a connection, particularly with these swing voters. And one of the things, I hate to say it, but I'll say it, I think Trump, even though I may not like a lot of the things he does and says, certainly, but you know who that person is. You
Right.
do know who that person is. So even if it's the villain or the hero or whatever, Biden does connect well, and it's hard to reach that level. And there's a familiarity there over 4 decades.
Yeah, for those who are on our uh, live on Instagram or Facebook, you can join the conversation on YouTube. Let it be known, YouTube LIBK-news, or let it be known show producer on Twitter, or let it be known on Facebook to join the conversation. Variety D comedian says, "Good evening from London in the UK. We do not want that big bully Trump back in power ever." And that seems to be, when you travel this beautiful world, it seems to be a prevailing thing that people who have a modicum of uh, care, I guess, of fairness about them, you talk to them. Those who have no stake in the game, they don't want to see Trump running the United States. Um, that is that's something that we didn't see in the past. At least I didn't notice. Now, Lauren, I defer to you, because in the past, I never really saw, until Trump got into the picture, and maybe even Obama, a lot of foreign uh, folks really invested in an American election.
Yeah, one of the things that the Democrats have a huge advantage here on is, of course, Trump's unfavorables are through the roof. He's someone that you can coalesce opposition around very easily. And
Mhm.
so what the Democrats are going to have to do is build on that spirit that you just talked about of, I do not want Donald Trump. There's a lot of folks in the polling and the door knocking that are saying exactly that. I don't think it necessarily is a question of, I don't want Donald Trump, but I'll vote for anyone. But, I do think
Mhm.
that it's still a huge building block that the Democrats can work with, and it's going to be very advantageous for them.
And let's face it, listen, before we get further into this, um, can we really argue with the 3.5 years of Biden's presidency, what he's been able to accomplish, despite the opposition, despite the sickening atmosphere in Congress? Um, I think the one big X mark against him is the whole Palestine-Israel situation,
Yeah, I
and it's
think
a
that
pretty big mark, right?
it's problematic because, of course, it's a hard policy to explain when you have possibly 40,000 people who have been killed by the IDF and under the decisions of Benjamin Netanyahu, who the American taxpayers are sending billions of dollars to. And a lot of folks in this country are not happy with that. And those folks are in big communities in Michigan that have been voting Democratic, and they've made it very clear that they are not okay with that. And there's been no good answer from this administration. I mean, let's face it. And I think everybody understands that what happened in October of 2023 should have been answered by the Israeli government, and was. When you start getting
Mhm.
into the issue of 20 and 30,000 people being killed behind that, it's a hard policy to explain, and they're being very outspoken at a time when billions of taxpayers' money in this country is going to Israel. So and again, when in that primary, when that group got together in Michigan and voted 100,000 in protest, that I don't think that had ever been seen before, not to the tune of 100,000 voters. That would indicate to you, and of course, Michigan's a swing state. This is all going to come down to Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Virginia's starting to get into the discussion too. Virginia, the Democrats should be very nervous that Virginia's getting in the discussion. But yeah, the Middle Eastern policy was problematic for the Democrats.
So, Lauren, Southbound 3000 says, if Hillary couldn't win, how's the current VP going to stand a chance? Can you answer that?
Yeah, that is the Tesla and Figaro. I'm not going to take any credit for that. That's Tesla and Figaro who brought that up first, because Tesla and Figaro knows what she's talking about. So she was like, look, if this country could not elect a white woman with a huge resume, Hillary Clinton had one of the best political resumes at the time that she ran in 2016. It was off the chain, and she loses. And not only that, white women vote 53% for Donald Trump. To me, a lot can be blamed on James Comey's foolishness and the New York Times' foolishness with that "but her emails" nonsense. That should have never happened. There was Russian interference as well. These are intangibles these are sort of the intangibles that Hillary Clinton could not have helped. I mean, she couldn't. It wasn't her fault in that sense. Certainly, there were things about her campaign that could have been done better, but she had the resume. She sure as hell had the name recognition. Right. We also should remember that it was Barack Obama who wanted Hillary to run in front of Joe Biden. So Joe Biden actually could have run and should have probably run in 2016, in which case the conversation we're having now, we wouldn't have been having. The conversation we're having now, we would not be having right now if it hadn't been that. But at any rate, we don't know what history would have been if Biden had run against Trump that first time in 2016. So Hillary losing, that is an interesting question as it pertains to Vice President Harris. And I don't have an answer for that right now. We're gonna have to see the polling in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm sure there's gonna be some instant polls tomorrow morning.
Of course, and they're gonna be inaccurate, so people should stop.
It's gonna be inaccurate.
Yeah.
Inferno BLK 72 says Democrats are toast because of Nancy Pelosi and her tyrants. But I want to ask, how does any of this fall on the shoulders of Barack Obama?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it falls on the shoulders of Barack Obama, because he was the one that wanted, again, Hillary to run in front of his vice president. And I'm going to be real here. I do think that President Biden has a very legitimate reason to be very ticked off right now. When you see your friends go against you, when you were duly nominated by the party, and you have turned in a record of success by the numbers that some can reasonably argue, is a better record of success than President Obama. We look at the jobs numbers. Remember, we had that black unemployment number that Barack Obama didn't want to talk about. It was like 22 or 23 that, of course, set him against the CBC because, they dared to bring that up. They should have been bringing that up. All right. I mean, Maxine Waters should have been bringing that up. So at any rate, yeah. So President Obama is a really brilliant, smart person. He is a historic figure of the highest magnitude. I remember covering his White House with a great deal of excitement just to see him standing there. He'd have to even say anything. It was wildly exciting. But as a political prognosticator, he hasn't been that great. He's just brilliant about his game. So that's
again, folks, if you're just joining us, breaking news: President Biden has dropped out of his campaign for re-election. He has endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris. Join us on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. Let it be known. We are discussing it. We have the consummate political journalist, Lauren Burke, with us. But Barack Obama has remained silent. And that silence. So just before this announcement, a few hours before this announcement, I saw a report that claimed to have gotten some inside information about President Biden's thinking, that he was extremely perturbed with Obama. He was extremely perturbed with the Clintons. He felt that he stepped aside in 2006 or 8 or whatever it was. He felt he stepped aside for Hillary. He felt that he had paid his dues and he had done everything the party had asked of him to do. And now he felt backstabbed. And then here we are a couple hours later, the huge earth-shattering announcement that the president has decided from his sick bed in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, that he is not going to seek re-election and that he indeed is going to endorse his vice president to be the first African American woman to be the first woman, period, to hold that job. Lauren, Biden, you started to say it. Biden should be a little ticked off.
He should be a bit ticked off.
A lot of
I
bit.
mean, we're you got to remember, I think, what is it, 28 days to the convention? The convention is August 19th. Today is July 21.
They were scheduled
So,
to do a roll call, right, in about 2 weeks.
right. I mean, 28 days until the floor is a pretty harsh come down. This has never happened before in American history. The only comparable example for on the presidential level is, of course, Lyndon Johnson. And again, Lyndon Johnson made that announcement on March 31, 1968, which gave the
Right.
party a pretty good amount of time. Nobody, and you got to remember, the party was not, trying to get Lyndon Johnson to push him out or embarrass him. This is a humiliation. I mean, let's
This
just
is
be
a
real.
humiliation. Yeah.
You're pushing him out, and
Mhm.
even though I know a lot of people might think they've got the greatest reasons in the world for that, this man has dedicated his entire life to the Democratic Party. And not only that, he won at a crucial time. He beat Donald Trump during COVID. It was
Mhm.
the same year as George Floyd, so all sorts of stuff was going on. He picks the first black female member of the Supreme Court. He picks a record number of black judges, federal judges around the country. He makes this announcement pointing to the fence like Babe Ruth, by the way, before doing that with Ketanji Brown Jackson. He says it to everybody. He says, I'm going to pick the first black woman for the U.S. Supreme Court.
And he did.
When he did that, I thought that was a political mistake. I mean, I felt like, look, why tell everybody?
It was a Clyburn move, though. Let's be real.
My view
Clyburn
of
said,
go ahead.
make this announcement. I'll endorse you.
My view of it was do it, but don't tell anybody. You don't need to actually tell anybody because then they're going to strategize against it and all that.
Then he had a runoff with black women only for vice president.
Right. He picks a black woman for vice president. And once again, for all of you out there confused, yes, she is a black woman. She is a member of AKA, the oldest black sorority. And she went to Howard. I mean, I'm not having that argument. I'm not. Okay.
Well,
I'm
right
not
now, Lauren,
and
is one winner, one clear winner right now, and that is Hunter Biden. And I say that because you got it now. You got to pardon him. You have to pardon him now. Biden has to pardon his son now.
Well, maybe, but I would just say this about Joe Biden. First of all, he should be shooting for the fence on a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
There should be executive orders. I'm going to channel one of my other favorite people to listen to, Angela Rye, who on Native Land Pod made some extremely, extremely good points. There should be executive orders for affirmative action. There should be all sorts of things going on out of this White House.
The Supreme Court made him a king, right?
Hey, the Supreme Court says he can do whatever he wants, so let's do it. I mean, what are you waiting around for? I have no idea. You don't know if the Democrat's going to be in office next year. He should be shooting for the moon, not just on Hunter Biden, but a boatload of other policy.
Absolutely. And we were talking, Greer and I was talking about that earlier, Lauren. The fact that people equate that Supreme Court ruling and say, oh, they've effectively ended democracy with their ruling, right? But they equate it only with Trump. Well, no, that ruling went into effect immediately. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, yes, yeah. So he can.
And so,
right now.
like, come on, what's holding you guys back?
Exactly. So let's he's a lame duck right now. It's a lame duck president, right? I mean, do whatever you want.
Doesn't that make a person dangerous?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I wouldn't say in Joe Biden's case, I wouldn't say dangerous because he's always been a responsible adult his entire life in office. But this is a time
I am definitely not feeling that whole Michelle Obama thing right now about when they go low stuff. That's out the window. That's gone.
Yeah, that should be out the window. But he comes from those politics of I sat down and played poker with Strom Thurmond, even though I disagree. That's Joe Biden. But I do think from a legislative and a policy standpoint, If you're not doing it now, when are you doing it? And you know what they're coming in with because of Project 2025. You know what they're coming in with. So let's just be real about what it is about to happen maybe in this country this next year.
Yeah, we spoke to Stephen Benjamin. Greer and I did on Friday, the director of the Office of Public Information or public whatever you call it at the White House on Friday, and he said, "I am scared to death of Project 2025."
Mm-hmm.
We asked him the same question I asked you on Friday. I asked you, pick which one is worse, Project 2025 or the crime bill, and he said, and he was sort of like you on that. The crime bill had a lot of issues,
Mm-hmm.
and it really set us back.
Right.
But he says, "I am scared to death," of his exact words. And we'll probably play more of that interview with Stephen Benjamin tomorrow
Mm-hmm.
on Let It Be Known. But he said, he's afraid of it. It gives you nightmares. But people are angry right now, Lauren. How does the Democratic Party? How can they? How can they win? Because right now, um, Trump is in the driver's seat big time now. This really puts him in the driver's seat because they've been in such disarray for the past month. A debate performance just threw this party into complete meltdown. Can they recover? What's next?
I don't know the answer to that. And I also don't know the answer to what happens if somebody throws Joe Biden's name into nomination at the convention, by the way. I mean, he's got to say the part where LBJ said that part, I will not accept. I will not seek and I will not accept means don't put my name into nomination at the convention. I'm not sure that doesn't happen, particularly if the blue team can't get their act together in 28 days. And from what we've seen already, I'm not too hopeful because you got that Carville Obama dude bro wing that thinks you can have a mini convention and all this other stuff, which I think is ridiculous. I actually think that this right here is hugely risky. We might be looking back on all this and seeing this moment, July 21, 2024, is the moment they lost the election. We don't know that yet. We'll know that in 106 days. But I can't answer the question, and I think nor can anyone else. This is when I start leaning on the Larry Sabatows of the world who have this more deeper knowledge. I'm a history major. I have a history degree, but they're older than me, so I get to ask them stuff about what was happening when they were alive, seeing it. This, to me, is a very risky moment for the Democratic Party in the country.
Just got a statement from Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries. He says, quote, "President Joe Biden is one of the most accomplished and consequential leaders in American history. In less than one term, he rescued the nation from a once-in-a-century pandemic, brought the economy roaring back from the brink of recession, enacted consequential legislation for everyday Americans, and saved our democracy by defeating the insurrectionists in chief. America is a better place today because President Joe Biden has led us with intellect, grace, and dignity. We are forever grateful." And you hear these statements, and yeah, I like Hakeem. I've had a chance to talk with him, rode the Amtrak with him a few times now.
Yeah.
But these are some of these people, and I don't want to hear from Schumer. I don't want to hear from Pelosi, but these are the people who, by media accounts anyway, were doing the backstabbing. I mean, how does Joe Biden? How do you think Joe Biden feels when he sees a statement like this from somebody who allegedly, would now? Hakeem did come out. I believe it was Friday, and said Joe is our nominee. But when you hear from a Pelosi, when you hear from a Schumer, and even Obama, we haven't heard from Obama, but I'm pretty sure at some point today we're going to get a statement from Obama praising Joe Biden's career. How do you react to that, Lauren?
I think all these statements are meaningless. If he's so great and you love him so much, then why are you pushing him out as president, as the presidential nominee of the party? So that doesn't jive. That it just doesn't work right now. You help push him out of a moment, a historic moment. And this man, you can say whatever you want. He's the only person on this planet who's beaten Donald Trump. And it's going to be interesting to see the polls again in 2 weeks as to who polls against Trump better. Who is that going to be? Because name recognition.
Lauren, I'm sorry. What poll do you, Lauren Burke, Virginia Black News. What poll do you look to the most?
Sienna,
With the most
see,
credibility?
Sienna, New York Times, and I listen to Larry Sabato because Larry Sabato is pretty accurate. He was accurate 2 weeks. He had said 3 weeks ago that the polls were going to probably not do well for Biden. They were going to even out. We're seeing some movement, and everything he said 3 weeks ago turned out to be accurate. And Sabato is not the type of guy that is an alarmist, guy. He's good. He's good.
Mhm.
Siena New York Times has been pretty stable. They tend to poll registered voters. I tend to look at polls where they're polling registered voters.
Right.
I do like Cornell Belcher. I can't think of the dude's name at Hit Strategies. I'm having a mental block, but he's a black pollster as well, who I think all these people should be brought in. And Kamala should have Cornell Belcher do all her polling from this point on, it seems to me. And Hit Strategies is out there. So some of the black pollsters too, I pay a lot of attention to. And you can see them on Roland Martin
Right.
Unfiltered quite often.
Yeah, I know Roland does go. Roland rolls with hit strategies and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. Um, we just saw Greer just put up Donald Trump's statement. Um, we know that this guy doesn't even know the meaning of the word humility. Um, he says he's the worst president in history. After he drops his reelection bid, he said he's unfit, and uh, pot calling kettle what? I mean, give me a break. Unfit. He may very well be. You called this out, not Lauren. You said this. I believe you started talking about this before the debate about Biden's potential cognitive problems. I think we had you on, and I think you called it out a little bit back then. Um, but unfit, maybe that would be the only way that he's unfit, especially when you compare him to the other guy, right?
I mean, the idea that Donald Trump, who is a pathological liar, uh, had no government experience before running in 2016 whatsoever, has now been convicted. He is now a convicted felon. Has been involved in a rape case. Uh, has been involved. His family is involved in all sorts of chicanery that, for some mysterious reason, Merrick Garland won't investigate. And that would be Jared
Mhm.
Kushner in the gang. For him to be discussing anybody else's qualifications for anything is laughable. Donald Trump should shut his mouth. I know he won't. He is involved in political campaign, and
Donald
so he
Trump
is
shut his
involved with
mouth. Yeah,
political.
right.
Yeah, he's involved in political campaign, and he's doing what people do when they're involved in political campaign. But given his track record, given his behavior, given his lack of ethics, and completely lying, and then having his supporters attack violently the United States Capitol on Jan 6, 2021, he has nothing to talk about with regard to Joe Biden.
Yeah, here's a man when someone was shot and killed last week at his one of his rallies, and when some shattered glass nicked his ear, Biden calls him up and wishes him well, and this is his response to Biden stepping out of the race, calling him unfit, and saying he never was. I mean, this is the real Donald Trump. I do want to ask this question because it's someone under the on YouTube using the screen name of Why Ask says, please speak about the difference between the Biden voter and VP Harris voters. Says this individual says there's a major difference between the two.
Well, the only thing that we have really to try to figure out who might vote for Harris versus who might vote for Trump is, of course, Trump's numbers and, really, in my view, Hillary Clinton's numbers. Now, we can't, of course, say that Hillary Clinton and Vice President Harris are the same person, because they're not. But women in this country typically have had a harder time making it to that statewide office of governor, and certainly when it comes to the national offices, because we haven't had a female president. They seem to always come after the men, black men, and, of course, in the case, white men, of course. But I'm just saying, we do know that with regard to Hillary Clinton's numbers, a majority of women voted for the man, which was Donald Trump.
Mhm.
So it wasn't just that they voted for a man; they voted for somebody who was, I think it's safe to say, irresponsible, and yet they voted for him anyway. That would tell you that the Vice President Harris might have a problem. The other thing is, but one of Biden's biggest arguments for election was that he is a draw for white working class voters in places like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. That was a big
Mhm.
big
Yep.
thing because he's pro labor, pro union, hard hat, all that imagery. And Biden,
Pro-union and couldn't get the union endorsement.
yeah, well, I suspect that's coming. And by the way, Sean O'Brien is now getting challenged in his leadership by his deputy, which of course was bound to happen. That's the Teamsters, of course, who are taking forever to figure out how to, get their act together and endorse Joe Biden. But there's some indications that women have a harder time at the ballot box. Now, one of the things you got to think about, though, is Roe v. Wade flipping. And then Roe v. Wade flipping, and knowing in these internal polls, you're seeing a lot of single issue decision making around the Dobbs decision and abortion in favor of the Democratic Party. That could play well for Vice President Harris. The other thing that's going to play well for Vice President Harris is Black women. The most dedicated block of voters for the Democratic Party are going to get excited. And that is
What about
going
Black
to be,
men?
I think Black men are too. So Black men are number one most dedicated for the Democratic Party. Black women are number one for the Democratic Party. Black men are number two. And I don't know why it is that these commentators keep saying things like Black men like Donald Trump. There's no evidence of any of this. I mean, there's no evidence. There's no election day evidence that Black men are overly interested in Donald Trump. I don't care about polls or what you anecdotally were told at some barbershop, 3 weeks ago. I'm talking about when people vote, Black men are number two. So we got to get off this thing of Black men really like Donald Trump because he's masculine or incarceration and all these other stereotypical nonsensical things. Black men are right behind Black women in terms of supporting the Democratic Party. So I don't know where that's coming from, but it is dumb and there's no evidence for it. There's no evidence for it. Why?
Greer is asking, Lauren, is this simply Biden giving these elites the middle finger?
He might be. He might be. I think he's just tired of this. I mean, wouldn't you be?
Yeah.
You see 30 members of your own party stabbing you in the back over a 24-day period. Nobody else has gone through that. Nobody. I mean,
At this juncture too, right?
no, not on this level. I mean, we certainly have seen, obviously, in state politics, people get backstabbed. You typically don't get backstabbed by your own party. I mean, I'm going to say it again, and the Democrats are exceedingly good at this. We saw it with Al Franken. We saw it with Andrew Cuomo. I mean, this is not an era where we can afford to lose people as talented and as smart as Andrew Cuomo and Al Franken. Al Franken was one of the best questioners in hearings I ever saw. By the way, Vice President Harris, then Senator Harris, wasn't bad either. But he was dismantled by his own party, by Kristen Gillibrand and all these people. That made no sense, with no evidence and no nothing. That made no sense. And you did have a lot of people regret it later in the great Jane Mayer piece in the New Yorker, but it happened. And he's out of politics because of that. Same thing with Andrew Cuomo. I mean, Andrew Cuomo should be the attorney general right now, not this guy, Merrick Garland, is scared of his own shadow. So I don't understand what the Democratic Party thinks it's doing. I think most people understand my feelings on Justin Fairfax, another person who was destroyed by his own party with no facts and no evidence on the table. So the Democrats have to figure out how to get on their team and stop messaging for the Republican Party.
Well, and here it is, Chuck Schumer. In a very short, brief statement, he says this: Joe Biden has not only been a great president and a great legislative leader, but he is a truly amazing human being. His decision, of course, was not easy, but he once again put his country, his party, and our future first. Joe, today shows you are a true patriot and great American. If I'm Joe Biden, I'm publicly gonna go back on Twitter and tell Schumer what he could do with that statement.
These statements.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
They're bizarre.
Right. The orange pill nurse says, "Oh, shut up, Schumer."
They're bizarre. I mean, you guys pushed this guy out for the last 24 days, and you look ridiculous. Just, I've gotten to a point now where I'm more favorable to people who just come up to my face and say it. Because these are just games. These are just games. Nobody believes that. Schumer, now we got news that Schumer went to Delaware and told Biden to get out. And then they never denied that. So apparently that's exactly what happened at that meeting. So come on. And then, of course, it doesn't make any sense from a messaging standpoint to be saying that this guy that's so great we're pushing out as our nominee. I just think they should just shut up.
Another out of touch Another out of touch statement. Jamie Harrison, chair of the DNC, says Democrats are prepared and united in our resolve to win in November. You're not united. Come on. Come on.
Well, there's
Says this
definitely
process will be governed by established rules and procedures of the party. Our delegates are prepared to take seriously their responsibility in swiftly delivering a candidate to the American people. So he is, come on, Jamie. Where's your support for Kamala? Number one, but 1A is give it a rest with this unity stuff. Who's going to buy that?
probably nobody. I mean, some of these people, and I think Jamie Harrison is one of them. He's just caught in the crosshairs of this moment. I mean, I know in Virginia, none of our folks knew anything about it. Just in texting around, like none of the people on the high, the people on the high end of the politics in Virginia did not know anything about this, including the people who were working for Biden. So that should tell you. And I'm not saying that's their fault. This is probably something that Biden sprung on everybody. I don't even know that Quentin Fulks knew. Quentin Fulks was on TV.
On television today, right?
Right. And saying that the president was in the race. So I'm thinking that he might not have known. So I don't think, again, I'm not a big go ahead.
I'm sorry, but it tends to make you believe that Biden just all of a sudden he just got incensed and said, you know what? It's Sunday. It'll catch them totally off guard. I'm going to tell them what they can do with themselves, and I'm leaving, and I'm going to make sure to drop that in that my vice president should be the nominee.
Yeah, I think that I'm not a big believer in blaming staff, because staff is usually a reflection of what the principal is doing, and having to handle and deal with that principle is not easy sometimes. And certainly we get to this high level, like President of the United States. There's not a city council race. So I'm not surprised that people don't know. It's not their fault that they don't know, because, this might have just been him and Joe Biden sitting in a room and somebody typing a letter up. I mean, it would not surprise me. We'll find out in somebody's book another year from now. But I just feel like when I hear that members of Congress and people who are on the campaign don't know, that tells me that nobody knew, and Quentin Fulks is somebody that was very confident this morning.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to go out. I haven't been in this position, but I've been close of not knowing what your principal is telling people. And then you're out saying stuff. And then you find out later that, oh my goodness, that's not what's happening. I've not had that happen. You got to be real straight with the people you consult. Do not put me in that position. But this is, again, with respect.
Somebody's nominating you for president, Lauren.
Inferno
Black.
Yeah, I wish. But Quentin Fulks is a really smart person, a really good messenger. And for him to get out today and say all that tells me he didn't know anything. And that's not his fault. It's not his fault.
Yeah. And listen, before we wrap, they knew 3 years ago, they knew 2 years ago, they knew last year this man was old. I was with Ashley Fields, and we were at the White House maybe a month ago or so. It's the last time I saw the president up close. I mean, obviously he's 81 years old. He looks 81 years old. He moves like an 81-year-old. The stuttering is an 81-year-old stutter. Whether or not there's something more there, that's it's up to debate, and now it's none of our business, because he's made it none of our business now by stepping out of the race. But for Democrats, and we've talked about this, and I just want you to close on this again, for them to just go so public with this the way they did, it's so damaging, Lauren. So I don't see how they recover.
No, they can recover. They can recover, but they've got to be on message together. They've got to be message unified, not just saying it. Like, saying that you're unified doesn't mean you're unified. You got to have everybody saying the right thing. You've got to have a campaign strategy, which I have not detected to this point. You've got to have some younger folks involved, your Jasmine Crockett's and some of these, younger politicians who, quite frankly, are very good at messaging and very direct to their communities. You can't be doing what they've been doing, which is kind of just, obviously attacking their own candidate doesn't work. But you have to think in a team way, and not about just your own election. And Jake Sherman over at Punchbowl is correct, though. All these people care about is their election. That's it.
Right.
That's all they care about.
Yeah, with
He's right about
without,
that, but you can't show it publicly. I mean, just because you feel something doesn't mean everybody's got to know it publicly. So I just, they're making some huge mistakes, and they can't continue to
yeah,
do that and win.
listen, the bottom line is they care about their own elections. Well, I tell you what, based on Mr. Dictator on day one and based on Project 2025, they may not, their positions may be gotten rid of. It just might not even matter if everything breaks red in November. So it's just ludicrous. Who would have thought we'd have witnessed this? Who would have thought we would have witnessed a complete mutiny like this,
Yeah.
Lauren? White Access, forgive me if I'm wrong, but there has been a major coordinated effort between major media, some political people, and money people to remove Biden and Vice President Harris. I think a lot of people agree with that.
Um, yeah, there's definitely a story there that's growing with tech, this whole idea that these tech guys want to control everything. What's the guy's name that owns Thiel, Peter Thiel, being involved with Trump, and
Yep.
they want to control everything. And it is there's a huge story there. I'm expecting Ken Vogel over the Times that does some really good reporting on money and politics. Maybe Jane Mayer will take it up. She's hit a lot of these money and politics issues. But that is a huge story here. They're pushing in the background against Biden for a lot of reasons because he does fight for interest. He's talking about taxing the rich. They don't want to hear
Yeah.
that. No matter how much money they make, and no matter how much, they're always there griping, and they're always the victim of something. I find myself all the time asking people who I know make six figures, what are you complaining about? Particularly on the right. This country has worked for you. You've succeeded in this country. You make a lot of money. And then you see Tucker Carlson up at the RNC convention bitching, moaning, and complaining. And I'm like, what are you talking about? All right. Like, you made it in this country. Why are you so angry? Why are you so
Yeah.
mad about it? So it's a question that very rarely gets answered.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we will again, folks, the breaking news: President Biden is not going to continue his campaign for reelection. We're going to have a lot more tomorrow morning on Let It Be Known. Also, before we close, just want to our thoughts, our prayers, etc., are with the family of Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, who, if you
Yeah.
don't know, passed away on Friday, or was it yesterday? She passed away at the age of 74 years old, pancreatic cancer. Um, Sheila Jackson Lee was certainly a champion for the causes that they still are trying to fight for. Things like reparations, things like the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, things like the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, all things Black. That was Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. She certainly was one of our biggest proponents, the Black press. She never left us out. We certainly appreciate and remember Sheila Jackson Lee. We will talk more about the late great Congresswoman tomorrow on Let It Be Known. Lauren, again, so thankful for you and your availability today to just jump on this way. Check out Lauren, Black Virginia News. Subscribe to that Black Virginia News, y'all. It's all the good stuff coming out of Virginia and beyond. So thanks again for joining Let It Be Known. We'll see you in the morning.
Thank you.